We have an ABM
Yes.
briefing, and you can put it up and proceed, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good evening. We have to apologize in advance. First of all, the ABM was done kind of late, so you may be seeing this for the first time. So as a result of that, I'll try to go through much of the information on here, so we'll try to answer some of your questions. This, of course, was an item that came to us, I believe, at the last meeting, when Alderwoman Widener was looking to amend the budget to come up with the funds that would be necessary to replace the equipment that is no longer operable, that is used for the CAR 25. CAR 25 is basically the public access cable channel that the city operates, a so-called PEG channel. PEG is an acronym for Public Educational Government. These channels came about as cable became more pervasive throughout the U.S., and laws allowed for local communities to then have these channels that would provide public access. Franchise fee agreements then typically provided for funding along the way that funded some of these. The city's specific history, back 1996, there was first a agreement that was signed with Telecommunications Inc. that was later bought out by AT&T. That really created the first cable franchise agreement. And then CAR 25 itself was actually officially launched in 2003. That came about when the city council allocated $40,000 to operate the first channel. Basically, franchise fees are paid to the city for the use, ongoing use, lease, if you will, of the right-of-way for the actual cable lines that are run throughout the city to serve individual residents that get cable television services. And at some point, there was also the opportunity that cable companies paid a certain fee that actually went to provide for PEG channels. Those were eliminated effectively in 2007. After that time, it was no longer lawful to actually require those kinds of fees, but the franchise fees did continue. And for the city of Racine, we receive about $830,000 from actual cable franchise fees. That really hasn't gone up at all over the course of the last decade and a half. And that's largely as a result of the fact that the cable use has continued to decrease. So the cost of individual cable goes up year after year, but the number of users has been going down. So as a result, our actual total franchise fees have been going down. There's also been a recent state law that decreases those further by 4.5%. They're 5% in effect of the cost paid. It goes down to 4.5% in 2021, and then 4% in 2022. So those will continue to decrease. The issue here, of course, was this equipment that has been put into place to allow CAR 25 to operate, to broadcast, and of course, more recently, primarily the broadcast through CAR 25 were the Common Council meetings. And that equipment really became something on the order of 15 years old. It simply was obsolete, and it just started failing. It started overheating, and at some point it just completely stopped working at all. So then the question became, what would it take to get this back in operable condition, actually with new quality, contemporary of the state-of-the-art technology today, to rebuild the thing and put it back in its place. So we had suggested when this first came up, there was an estimate of around $30,000. That was kind of off the cuff. It wasn't very detailed at the time. We've had time since that time, and Paul Ancona, the IT director, can speak to it in more detail if you'd like. Paul is here. But specifically, we believe the costs associated with replacing this equipment, and we do have it itemized and listed out on an attachment to the ABM, would be $87,666.29. That consists of something, again, Paul will go through, Leadtronics, Sony camera updates, licenses, TriCaster production system chassis, TriCaster compatible control panel, the Granicus Legistar upgrades for years 1, 2, and 3, and then the fiber installation. So combined, that's $87,600. Then as this would be installed, there would be a certain amount of training that would be required for the IT personnel. We've estimated that at $8,000. And then the staffing associated with operating and maintaining this, we believe it would take a half full-time equivalent of $50,000. So we believe that the cost to appropriately bring this back up, operable with the appropriate latest technology that would allow this to function for at least a reasonable period of time, along with the staffing that would be necessary, in total would be $145,666.29. So basically, with that, we've suggested that the alternatives here are, you could in fact approve the funding for the $146,000. That would allow for the modernization of the equipment, ensure the equipment's lifespan is worthy of that amount of investment. It would establish, we would also establish a timeline for Car 25 to be operational. Recognize that it will take some time to procure and install this equipment. It won't happen immediately, obviously. We have to acquire it from the basic vendors over time, get it, install it, put it in place, get the training, get it back up and running. And then funds would have to be allocated out of the existing capital budget of IT department, as well as an additional $56,500 from the city's contingency fund. And we're suggesting that the existing IT budget could basically take $30,000 that was currently allocated for infrastructure replacement or switches. The SAN addition, which is basically some additional data storage that would support body cameras from the police department, that's $37,000. And then the wireless access points that we're going to be providing Wi-Fi to the community centers, that's $22,500. So those could be deferred for at least this budget year. And then the contingency fund would provide the final $56,500. That would make up $146,000, which would be slightly more than the needed $145,666. Other options or alternatives in this case, you could in fact defer action and funding on this. You could direct administration to explore the feasibility of including this in the next annual budget. In the interim, the city would then develop additional methods to expand public access through the internet, social media, and other methods, or you could simply take no action. So in this case, there's very clear opportunity for you, if you feel this is an appropriate policy matter, policy decision, to restore this and get it back up and running, that we believe it could be done effectively, adequately, and with the right amount of staffing for $146,000. There are some clear trade-offs. There are other things within IT that would not be done now. They would be deferred, and there would be some additional staffing that would have to go with it. With that, we would open that to any questions from a technology standpoint, obviously for Paul, or other policy questions that you may have. So that was the information we have. I'd also like to note that one of the things that was very difficult to find is the number of individual residences within our community that actually are served by cable services. They are not required by law to provide us that information. And even though we have tried very hard to get it, they guard that very closely for competitive reasons. So they don't have to, and in almost all cases, they're very clear about not providing it to us. So it would be speculative for us to guess how many people actually receive the service. We know that it's declining. We don't know to what extent. But we don't have any specific numbers to tell you that it's exactly how many households may be getting cable service. The other thing that makes it a little difficult to discern some of the use issues is many people also will bundle services. So they're getting cable because the deal they're getting on internet from the cable might be a good deal, and then they're getting some of the video programming thrown into it. Sometimes they even get a landline for their home. Sometimes people don't even use them, but it comes as a package deal. So separating that out as to someone who may be getting it only for the cable services, again, would be very difficult. So we don't have a lot of good information at all to offer you in terms of the usage in the community. It's just simply not available.
Thank you for your presentation. Did you say Paul wanted to say something? I don't know.
Paul, do you have anything further? I know you've looked at all these technology issues. You probably want to go over some of the things that can be done, can't be done, and what would be deferred. So,
and I think you covered the equipment issue. What we're looking at in terms of the equipment is going to state-of-the-art equipment so that we're not facing this again in a few years. All of this equipment is capable of 4K resolution, even though the channel does not support 4K. Our recordings would, and the upgrade to Granicus is actually to support that level of resolution. Equipment questions, be happy to answer if anybody has any.
First off, we have to go with public input. Any public input? Public input? You get your turn. Hold on. Public input first.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chase Hendricks. I'm CEO at Easel. I was also the chairman of the Cable Television Commission for about 5 years, served over 2 full terms. I'm the person who designed the entire system. I did all the research back in the day, created the plan for Car 25, was successful. We built it into an award-winning channel and community program that other communities, including Kenosha, emulated and used as a benchmark for their own success. And basically, a lot of the information I've heard today and in your prior meetings is completely inaccurate. Some of the information that was shared just now by the city administrator is not accurate at all. You can't, the way that some of the reporting for television works is differently than the internet. No one here understands how any of this works. It's with Nielsen ratings. You can actually get an idea of how many people are part of your cable subscription base. The franchise fee does still exist. The franchise agreements do still exist. And there was lack of due diligence in this outline here. So you're looking at Laytronics, it's pronounced Laytronics, so you have to know the companies you're talking to, for one. Laytronics is a little bit outdated at this point. There are other vendors out there that have better solutions in place, and what it seems to me is that you're taking something that was supposed to be about a $30,000 equipment upgrade, which doesn't even require that much amount, and you're extrapolating it into about $150,000, possibly over 3 years here, with 3 years of upgrades, $50,000 in staffing and training. You know, the question is, where is the staffing and where is this training and everything for the past several years? We've been collecting the money on the franchise agreements, but all that past investment was squandered through negligence. If we went with another solution, I've actually spoken with other vendors. I've got quotes for less than half of this amount on the equipment side, and on the training and staffing side, we never had anyone at $100,000, salary. So to say that we need a $50,000 part-time person to run this is a little bit out of whack as well. Basically, the franchise agreement is still in place, and the reason for the PEG channel is to provide a channel for the community. So we've got cable, and for anyone to imply that cable is worthless now is out of touch with marketing and advertising. Cable is a very valuable resource. That channel is very valuable. It's worth a lot of money. Anyone would pay a lot of money to have a cable channel these days. Our city could get a ton of benefit out of utilizing that channel properly and actually getting our community more involved. What happened a few years ago was not only wrong, but it was illegal. There was a bid rigging that occurred with Mayor John Dicker and other people, including Scott Letney, the city attorney. Crimes were committed. This is not a joke. This is very serious. I witnessed all of it. I reported it. Nothing was done about it. I walked away and kind of let you guys figure out what you need to figure out. And I was ousted from the commission. Then the cable commission was completely disbanded improperly. And then now the channel is completely black and worthless. So I think there's a bigger reason for why that is. But I think a lot of it has to do with a lack of knowledge, a lack of experience, and expertise. Paul Ancona did not understand the job when I worked I'm almost done.
You can say what you want to say, but this is not about personal complaints.
I'm telling you history.
Hold. It's not about personal complaints about city employees or other elected officials on this matter.
These are facts, sir.
But no complaints.
The facts are facts. I'm not complaining. I'm stating exactly what happened.
Okay, well,
The contract was rigged for $500,000. That's illegal. You can't rig contracts.
Okay.
That's illegal.
All right.
Everyone should be aware of that. I'm just stating the facts that occurred, and I'm stating that I am the expert in the city and the community.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Without doubt. I know more about this than everybody in this room.
All right.
And that is unquestionable. So, we still receive over $800,000 from the franchise agreements. We still have a reason and a purpose for the cable and community access channel. To pit the Car 25 cable access against body cameras, community center wireless access point, and IT infrastructure switches is completely irresponsible. The franchise agreement allocates the money specifically for this. The people in the city of Racine and surrounding communities pay the franchise fee in order to have this PEG channel as a resource for them. This is not about Car 25 versus body cameras. This is the entire point of PEG channels and PEG programming and the franchise fees that are still in existence. So we're taking $830,000 that we're getting basically off the backs of our cable providers, and instead of giving them the service that they deserve, which is a quality public access and educational channel, we're now taking that money and throwing it into an irresponsible IT budget or otherwise, and now pitting that channel against body cameras. That's completely unfair and irresponsible. This should not cost $146,000. I have a quote here from Teleview for $15,000. This would get us a new server, a Hypercaster all-in-one server. It would get us an analog converter. It would get us IP capture, standard switch. It would give us all the functionality that we would need. We don't need a 4K channel. You need a working channel. Right now our channel is completely dark and completely black. We don't need to have the most advanced channel in the world. We need to have a working one, which is what we had when I left, and I established a roadmap. That roadmap was not followed, and this is the result many years later. So I'm coming back with another solution. And just one more point, I actually offered to donate a lot of these services back in the day, and I included to donate branding for the entire city of Racine. I was going to donate all this, but you guys didn't bring it on the agenda, which was completely irresponsible as well. So I've got a quote here for less than $30,000 easily. I can get everything back up and running for $15,000. I'm here to volunteer my services as an expert in this community to help get the channel back on track. I'm not here to complain, sir. I'm here to tell you exactly what happened, what the facts were, and where we stand right now. I'd like to be part of a solution to fix this rather than just complaining. So that's why I'm here to tell you that I've done more due diligence than everybody in this room combined, and I can provide quotes and offer my expertise and experience to bring this back on track.
Do you have any quotes with you right now?
I have informal quotes, but if you'd like to engage me, I can provide formal quotes through my preferred vendors.
Phone number left?
I'll give you my business card, and you can follow up by email or however you prefer.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to help, and I'd like to fix the situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sir, here's my card, or whoever. Thank you. Thank you. Any other public
Thank you.
comment? Do we have people sign up first? Yes, I get it, correct. Did you sign up, sir?
No, I did not.
No, I want to sign.
Sure.
Well, you can sign up after first.
Yeah, go ahead and
Go ahead.
we'll get your name after.
Are you a candidate?
No, I am not a candidate.
All right.
Good evening, my name is Harry Waits, and I'm here to talk about Car 25. And I'd like to actually engage in the conversation of the legal obligations of the city. The franchise fees does include for Car 25, so every person that's a subscriber to Spectrum is paying this fee. So I think what you should probably do is get a legal opinion from your legal department to ask if you can actually shut down this channel in a legal matter without legal recourse from people who are paying for a service that they expect a service and that they will no longer be getting. So I think you need a legal opinion from your city attorney whether or not you can legally just shut this down, because people are paying for this service, and there is a legal contract there. So the other thing is I would recommend that the council actually entertain the previous speaker. He does have a lot of experience. I don't know him personally, but I do know of him, and his reputation is very good. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, Susan Wagner, and I'm coming here with the flu, so I'm not touching anything. I certainly don't have the expertise of this gentleman, and I thank you and commend you for doing all of that research. Car 25 is a valuable thing, it's a resource for the community. It doesn't belong to the city, it belongs to the community. You've been entrusted with running it, but it doesn't belong to the administration. No offense, but I do think it was manipulative to say that you're going to have to cut out body cameras and Wi-Fi, and that's just manipulative. That's just to say, well, which is more important, body cameras on our police officers or having a public access television station? It's a way that a lot of people in the city get to know what's going on in the government. I have left telephone messages for 3 elected officials in this room, multiple telephone messages that have never been returned. But Car 25, I could always watch every other Tuesday and see what was going on in county council. We can't count on other information coming out of City Hall. You guys are busy, I understand. You don't necessarily think constituents' issues have a high priority. Keep Car 25. It's ridiculous to say that it's going to cost $150,000 and we're going to have unsafe police officers and neglect the rest of us, the residents of the city of Racine.
Thank you. Did you sign up?
I did.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? You can come up and sign up, or you could speak and then sign up.
Sign up or
You
sign
could
up?
speak and then sign up.
Okay. I just want to say I noticed,
You can tell us your name, though.
oh, Chris Jansen. I spoke with most of you on the phone regarding this issue, with the exception of Mary Lynn, or Molly Jones. But I think Mr. Pounding kind of said it already. I mean, we're getting funds in and we're not getting a service. I mean, I think I've told multiple people, I know I've told Jason, I've told Mrs. Tabb, go into a restaurant, throw $100 on a table and leave. You know, it's kind of the same thing. We're, you know, the taxpayers, well, I guess not even the taxpayers. I got U-verse, I pay a fee every month, and I'm not getting, you know, my service, so I can't argue with them to get my, you know, my feedback. So I guess I'm here. And I guess the other thing is too, yeah, like, that is kind of interesting that it was like poor management, if you want to call it. You know, you're pitting, yeah, body cams and infrastructure issues, you know, because I understand it's kind of a budget issue, but you had to have known going into the budget, we're, you know, the first couple weeks into the budget, and you had to have known, but I think there's a little bit more to the picture that everybody's missing. I keep hearing that there's an individual missing in the IT department. I don't know anything more, but I just would like you guys to reconsider all this. I don't care if it costs $150,000. We're getting $800,000 from, or somewhere. It's got to be, even if it's like $600,000. You know, if it's, you know, declining, or even if it's down to $500,000, you're still getting money to basically piss it away. So I just think there's more than half the aldermen here. I think we should consider
Thank you.
doing.
Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Other elected officials? Alder White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to read again the communication sponsored by Alderman Widener requesting to amend the 2020 budget to include $30,000 need to replace the unsalvageable equipment for the public access station. The reason that verbiage is in the communication is because that specifically is what was told to me, the Alderman of the 6th District, by the city administrator when I inquired as to why the cable access channel had gone black. He said that there was an equipment malfunction. It was smoking and burning when we were trying to use it, so it had to be shut down. And coincidentally, the burning and smoking of the equipment coincided with the time that we lost the individual that worked in the MIS department that was responsible for administering Car 25. That person is no longer employed by the city of Racine, and I think that there is a correlation to the poor equipment and the lack of ability to have that public access station up and running. And Just want to point out a couple things that I had prepared before I saw the city administrator's memorandum of understanding that I had gotten as I walked into the room tonight. For one, looking at the budget going back to 2017, at which time we budgeted $796,724 in cable franchise fee. 2018, it went up to $850,000. 2019 was $850,000. And then according to, if you can find it, the budget that in our new budget books, it's very difficult to read, but it's in there, and you can find franchise fee. We had budgeted $830,000. So while there is a small reduction in what we are anticipating in revenues from the franchise fee, you can see it is pretty consistent. So I don't think money is really what is at issue here. I pay, and I have for over 40 years of my life, currently the franchise fee I pay every month to Spectrum is $5.12. And for that $5.12, I expect to go to Car 25 or Channel 25 and see a public access station, because what that says is if I put a video up that I think is something important for the rest of the city of Racine to see, I can take my video down to City Hall, to the MIS department, and that video will be uploaded. And that's what I get by $5.12 that I pay every month and have for over 40 years. So, and I would guarantee anybody that's paying to Spectrum TV for your cable channels or for Wi-Fi or for your phone, you are paying that fee. I also want to bring to your attention what is on our website regarding Bell TV, because that's really what it's called, not Car 25, it's Bell TV. So it says, welcome to Bell TV. Bell TV is the official television and web channel for the city of Racine. The station, formerly known as Car 25, was rebranded in July of 2013 as Bell TV, a fresh name that celebrates the endearing term given to Racine in the 19th century as the Belle, or the most beautiful city on the Great Lakes. Bell TV exists not only to serve the broadcasting needs of the local government, our common council meetings and city committee of the whole meetings, but it also is to provide a platform for the Racine area to engage in the creation of art and media, the exchange of ideas and information, and the creative display of the long appreciated beauty and culture of Racine. Bell TV is managed by the city of Racine, Wisconsin. The mission statement of Bell TV is, Bell TV seeks to serve the city of Racine by highlighting its beauty and vitality, inspiring and cultivating identity and culture, and equipping and educating the community in video and in broadcast production. And our core values are excellence, beauty, diversity, integrity, creativity, education, and professionalism. So that's really what Bell TV is about. And only part of it is for government access. The other part, the more important part, is for the public to have access to the channel that they can provide information that they believe is important to the remainder of the city. So back in the day, before we contracted this out to Skies Fall, we had hired back in 2003 a part-time for the $40,000 that was allocated, a part-time coordinator that was hired to not only coordinate for uploading city government officials or official business, but also to give the public an opportunity and the wherewithals so they could come down to the City Hall Annex and create videos. Like we had Uncle Tom, his granddaughter would do cooking shows and whatnot. They created their own videos, and this coordinator was responsible for getting those ready to be uploaded on what was then called Car 25. So there were all kinds of different organizations or individuals that provided videos that would be provided on Car 25. The channel over time became more political. Back in 2013-14, there was a drive to get rid of the public access portion of that, and that was the purpose for going out to Skies Falls, to make it more professional and scrutinize a little more who was preparing the videos. So there were some changes that were made, and ultimately there were no more public access. So then in 2014, got rid of the cable commission, and the channel kind of lost all of its appeal except for providing common council meetings and committee of the whole meetings, which was not really its function. I'd like to also take a few minutes and go over the agenda briefing, and please bear with me, seeing I just got this as I walked through the room this evening at 5 o'clock. I want to go over some of the information that's in here. So again, the subject is communication regarding the 30,000. I remind you that 30,000 number that I asked the budget be amended was a number that was provided at his best judgment by the city administrator. At that time, I didn't know that we had let go the person that was responsible in the MIS department for uploading the videos and making sure that the Bell TV or Card 25 was running appropriately. So Card 25 is a product 23-year agreement. Yeah, I get all that. That talks about 2003, the 40,000 that was allocated by the Common Council. What that says is the Common Council had a commitment to public access TV. And we no longer have that commitment. That committee was so firm in the Common Council that we took that $40,000 and we changed that to over $100,000 a year and made this position full-time and made sure that the equipment that our coordinator was using was up to date. So there was a commitment from this council to have public access on Card 25 or Bell TV. So the contract lasted 1 year and was not renewed, and the administrator is talking about 2013 when the mayor pushed his agenda to have this be contract, get rid of the individual that was then providing the service and contract it out to someone. So that's the change that he's talking about. But he did not mention in here the 10-year commitment we had prior to that, to having a coordinator that was paid for out of the general fund, which is replenished by the franchise fee to provide the kind of service we need to keep public access. So it says the costs related to the operation of Card 25 are absorbed into the MIS department. I remember very distinctly the conversation that took place on the council floor regarding the MIS department taking over the operation of Card 25 when we did not renew the contract with Skies Falls. It was Paul and Kona that came before the council and said, yes, they did have the staff that could do that. It would take up really very little time, didn't require a whole lot of budget. So now I'm hearing that it's going to take part-time, half-time equivalent to upload the Common Council and the Committee of the Whole meetings and to be a receptacle for any public videos that want to be uploaded on that. So I'm just kind of surprised that it's going to require that much manpower. So then talks about the issues of the equipment overheating and now broke beyond repair. Well, I did mention at the last Committee of the Whole meeting that we allocate $1.8 million worth of debt every year to the MIS department alone to purchase hardware and software. So for us to quibble about $15,000, $30,000, even $100,000 for equipment, to me just doesn't make any sense, and it should not be we are going to do data storage for the body cams, or we're going to do equipment for Card 25. There's no reason to have to make those kind of decisions because we have $830,000 allocated out of the franchise fee, a part of which I pay to provide the working equipment and the manpower needed to upload those videos. So the MIS department is in the process of completing a cost analysis, and that was a question that I wanted to ask of Paul Ancona, but it was already answered by Mr. Hendricks back there in regards to the, I forgot what it was called, the fiber optics, the most advanced technology possible to keep this, have this channel operational. I agree with Mr. Hendricks that we don't need that. We just need a channel that operates. We don't have to have the best technology. So I don't know why we would even consider spending the kind of money proposed by Mr. Acona when we don't know 2 years from now, according to the city attorney and the city administrator, if there will still be funding available through the cable franchise. So I dispute these numbers. I think that this council, through this committee, can make a recommendation to continue our belief that public access is important for the city of Racine, for the residents, and mostly for those that are paying this franchise fee. So I know that you have these options or alternatives as far as what kind of motion to make. I think that having not known what Mr. Hendricks' proposal was going to be, when I came in here tonight, I'm hoping that this council, this committee will make a recommendation of council to seriously consider the option that was made available to us by Mr. Hendricks and move forward with getting that channel back up and operational. There is no excuse why it is not. So that is what my hope from this committee will be.
Thank you.
And I think that about covers it.
Any other elected official? Yes, sir. Mr. Perez? Alder Perez?
Thank you, Your Honor. Friends, I said this at a meeting previously. We're in a situation within our city where the community continues, from the messages I'm getting, to distrust us even more and more as we go on. That's very unfortunate. I think we're very progressive. I think we've done a lot of things. I think this community is amazing. But to hear that from the community is very disturbing. And granted, it's not all the community, but people who don't have access to the internet, that can look online at the same time, they want to know what we're doing. They're legitimately concerned about what's going on in city council. Our mayor, I believe, has been doing a great job, but he ran on transparency. And we seem to be putting a cape or a curtain over that as we continue to do things. That disturbs me. That disturbs me a lot because it's difficult for us who have all the information to even move forward to know what's going on and how to understand it, for our community to have even less information and trust us to make those decisions that are good for our community. They want to know. They want to be able to contact us. They want to be able to see what we're doing and how well we're representing them. We make money for things that are important for us. This could be a big chunk of money, I get it. And it was said in committee before that, there's alternatives. This isn't necessary, but it is. And I deeply disagree with that comment that was made. Because we want to be about transparency. We want the whole nation to know what we're doing. We want our community in particular. I have a lot of elderly people in my community. They don't do the internet real well, but they can do television, and they have cable access. And I keep getting more and more, hey, what's going on? And say, oh, we don't know anymore. I'm surprised at the amount of people who come up to me that know what's going on because they watch us on television. And they come up to me and go, hey, you're my alderman, you did this, you said this. And I'm like, how do you know? Oh, I watch on TV. And for us to not have the ability to do that anymore, I think it's a really disservice to our community. We are in our positions because of them. Okay? We represent them. We need to be in a situation where we can be transparent with them and let them know how we're doing, what resources we're using. I know, we're in a financial bind, and it was said on the community before, money will keep getting less and less as we continue because of the state rules and so forth. I get that. But I think we have to create a balance. And we have to create a balance between accessibility and what we have available. And this is one of those key things in a democracy or in a republic like ours where accessibility has to take priority for the people in our community. We can't be doing government just for the people to know that are involved and come to our meetings, and they watch it online while it's going on through Legistar. Most people don't even know Legistar exists, except for us, because we use it to look at the agendas. So, I really think we're doing a disservice by not funding Bell TV. I think we have a responsibility to our community to fund it. We need to find the money. I mean, we find money for other stuff when we watch it. We need to find money for this. I encourage this committee, who has been very responsible with our finances, and I appreciate that very much, because I try to think that I'm a little conservative that way. But you need to do the right thing. You need to open accessibility to us again, so the community knows what we're doing and how we're doing it, and can chime in an educated way once they see what's going on. That's falling on your hands right now. And I think it would behoove all of us to look forward to a positive result from this and bring back government back to the people instead of keeping it within ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other elected officials? All right. Any other elected officials? Finance Personnel Committee?
Yes,
Vice Chair.
I totally support bringing back CAR 25, especially because I think it disenfranchises our senior citizens. So I want it back and running as soon as possible, but I would like an explanation, I don't know who's going to give it to me, about the $50,000 for staffing. Can anyone answer that? I want to know, when did CAR 25 go out exactly, and who was staffing it then? Because this should not be a new expense. It should have already, we had somebody staffing it before. So
That person, because of some HR issues, was let go. And we were not going to refill that position based on budget issues. There are no filling of empty positions right now. But to do this, we have to go back to the half position that he was filling in terms of CAR 25.
okay, so that, all right, I needed that explained. Thank you.
Any other questions, committee? Okay.
I have some questions for Mr. Palahniuk and a couple questions for Mr. Ancona. So I don't know who, okay.
We're both here. so-
Okay, first I want to thank both of you for answering my questions. I sent a pretty lengthy list of questions to both of you, and I really appreciate your time answering them in my email, so thank you for that. So I wanted to clarify the franchise fee versus the PEG channel fee. Again, I know you went through this already, but I think it bears, could you, so that's the one question for Mr. Palahniuk. And the second question I had for Mr. Palahniuk was how much contingency funds we used, but first things first. So.
In the franchise fee, I think that's a really important question, because franchise fees very clearly, whether it's paid for electric or cable television or water or whatever, or for one reason only, that is for the use of the public right of way. That's always what it's been for. There was a time in the state of Wisconsin when you could have additional funds that came from the cable provider that actually was to fund the PEG channel. They were individually negotiated, and then they were separate, allocated to the PEG channel. I think it was about 2007 that was eliminated. It was no longer lawful to do that. At that time and since then, many of these channels have gone out of business and they've left. And I think you did some recent research that shows of all the communities in the state, there's a relatively small number that still operate these channels, largely as a result of resources. The resources went away. So, when we talk about franchise fees and say, well, we have franchise fees, there are $830,000 of general fund revenues that we receive through cable franchise fees. I would note also, which you heard about this in the budget presentation, we receive about $30 million in general fund property taxes to support the general fund. In the general fund, we spend $47 million on police and fire alone. If there weren't other sources like franchise fees, then clearly we wouldn't even be able to support simply services like public safety. So the idea that somehow we have any of these franchise fees that are available to do anything other than be a general revenue source to the general fund is simply not accurate. Now, we can reallocate some of those, but if we do that, something else from the general fund would have to be cut. That's a policy decision, that can be done. But this idea that it's just out there and you can use it for that, simply not true.
Okay, and then my second question for Mr. Palahniuk is about, I know we used roughly $50,000 in contingency fees last year. Is that accurate? I may be recalling. Last year.
I'm going to ask Dave. When we had the big snowstorm, we wound up using it, I think, primarily for that. I don't remember the number.
Okay.
I'd have to look to Dave.
55,500.
55,500 from the contingency. Is that, may I ask, is that relatively stable over the years? Does that vary a lot? And how much?
It does vary a lot. It really depends. We do not go to contingency on a regular basis. It's for unusual things that happen. So in 2019, we did. In 2018, we didn't even have a contingency line item in the budget.
Okay.
2017, we used about 50,000.
Okay.
That's what I know off the top of my head.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that clarification. Okay, and for Mr. Ancona, I had a couple other questions, or either of you, but I think this is more, so there was some talk about having a system that would just bare bones replace what we have, and what would we expect the lifespan of such an arrangement to be compared with, I mean, I think I understand. It would make me feel more comfortable voting for this type of technology if we're expecting to get more out of it. So I wanted you to clarify a little bit the difference between a bare bones or clarifying,
The life expectancy isn't going to be, as far as the equipment life expectancy, isn't going to vary.
What is that life expectancy?
It's generally, they'll tell you 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
Generally, we get a lot more. But again, it's an electronic piece of equipment either way. So the life expectancy is going to be roughly the same either way.
Okay, all right. And then, so I only having been an alder for less than a year, I was wondering about clarification for what other uses for Bell TV have there been? I know it's the council meetings, the committee of the whole meetings, I think, the fireworks. Have there been a lot of requests for other types of uses for Bell TV over the last 3 to 5 years?
No, we had 4 producers total who brought things in and we put on the channel. Other than that, no, we have not had many requests.
Okay. Okay. Let me just double check if I had any other questions. I mean, oh yes, I did have one more question. So in 2013, or I mean, sorry, 2003, I was 13 and listening to my Madonna tape and my little pink radio player, which I could not play anymore. I don't own anything like that. So the technology was different in 2003, and I expect that now the technology is different. So are there plans to enhance other types of ways that folks could use this outside of Legistar? I know, or make the Legistar easier for use for folks. Is there a plan in place for that, like
Well,
a YouTube channel or something that might be easier for folks?
Yeah, we would be looking at putting the recordings on YouTube and on Facebook to bolster the availability of the recordings. We can't do live that way, but we can do the recording, and it would be next morning.
Okay, and the Legistar is live.
Yes.
Right. I've used that before. Okay, I think that's all the questions I have for right this moment.
Vice Chair Land.
The Sony camera updates, could you explain that a little bit, why we need that? Are our current cameras not working correctly, or?
The cameras that we have are capable of 1080p resolution. If we go to the 4K, we'd have to upgrade those cameras to 4K cameras, and that's what is in there. It's not absolutely necessary, and we would look at it to say, do we really want to go that way? As long as the equipment's capable of supporting it, we could then, down the road, improve the cameras.
So would it be okay if we moved this forward without that in there? Would we still
Yes.
have successful?
We would still be
That
able to
would
do
save
it.
some money then.
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, several things I want to try and address here, and hopefully I can keep track of all my notes. But first, I just want to say thank you to the staff and for the work that they did to try and solve a problem that was posed to them, and to try and find a creative way to come forward with it, whether it's the most inexpensive and easiest way, or whether it's the most forward-thinking and long-term solutions way. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that the staff stepped up and tried to solve a problem that was posed to them, and I think that that's commendable, and I really do appreciate the work that they put in to try and make that happen. I think a lot of times the staff really doesn't get the credit that they deserve, and a lot of times gets a lot of grief for their efforts, and I think it's really important that we recognize that they're trying to do the right thing and to trying to solve a problem. Quick question on the staffing piece. So with the staffing as it's connected to Car 25, would that person's primary function be to operate Car 25 then?
Half of their function would be.
Half of.
Mhm.
Okay. Would part of their function, in your mind, go to enhancing and improving the quality and the amount of programming that's running on Car 25?
That would be part of the role, yes.
Okay, that'd be really, I think, a benefit to this, because I do think a lot of the question and the interest has been in kind of trying to revive what Car 25 was and potentially could be moving forward. And I think, you know, the general sense that I've been getting from community members and people that I've been speaking to is that this is really a service that is worth trying to preserve. And I think that that's really important, and I understand that we may have to make compromises and things like that, but I do think it's, right now, what it sounds like we're debating more is, do we do the quick, dirty, find the cheapest solution possible just to make sure it works, even though it may not last very long, or take the time, or make the investment, the long-term investment, to try and make sure this works for as long as we can possibly get it to with, you know, better quality service, 4K, whatever the case may be. I think it's really important that we understand also that some of the compromises that are being made, we're not going to fund body cameras. I think that was repeatedly said, and that's not what's being, we're talking about body camera data storage, and this is additional storage to what was already proposed. This isn't getting rid of storage altogether.
Right.
This is just not having additional storage to what we are already proposing to make available to the community. So we're not doing body cameras. We're not talking about not having data storage. This is just additional storage that we're going to hold off on for just a year, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure that we're all clear on that.
Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, no, I think it's important that we know exactly that we're transparent about what we're talking about and that this is really clear to everybody. So, Mr. Ancona, the IT infrastructure replacement, the switches, it sounds like we lost a switch last Friday, is that correct? That took phones down?
We had a failure that took the phones down.
Okay, so obviously replacing this equipment is important, but are you confident that if we hold off on this $30,000 until next year, I mean, we're in a position you think we'll be okay during that time?
We were looking at replacing, starting with our oldest switches and moving through over the next few years to keep the costs down.
Sure.
So we're not going to be able to replace as many this year if we do this, but we will still replace the oldest switches, and those that we know are way past their life expectancy.
Excellent. And then the wireless access point in the community centers, which is the other piece that we were talking about, holding off on for a year. Currently, there is wireless access in the community centers, and it's moderate to good, or is it like really, really poor, and this would get us, where are we at
Those
there?
that have it have contracted with, mainly with Spectrum,
Okay,
to get business access so that they can provide some access.
okay,
What we were talking about is extending our network with our wireless access points and reducing their cost for having that in place.
okay. But so we would just delay this for a year, and they would ultimately get that service, but we would be looking at
Yeah.
pushing that back for a little bit. So we're not really hindering or undoing anything that could be done or was going to be done. We're just delaying a lot of these services. And you're comfortable with all this. I know it's not your favorite idea, but...
No, it's not my favorite
Right.
idea, but yes,
Okay.
it's certainly doable.
Okay. And then, I had another question, and now I completely lost it. Dang it, I should have wrote it down. So, you know, I think I'm obviously in support of trying to bring this service back, and I promise it's not just because my grandma called me and threatened me, but it's a powerful influencer nonetheless. But, you know, I really do think that this is something that, like I said, the staff put some time and effort into. They tried to find a solution to a problem, and I think they did a good job. I think they've responded to the concerns of the community, much like Alderman Perez had said he was hearing. You know, and I think that I trust the city staff, and I trust their expertise in trying to come forward with a solution. I think this makes sense to me. I think that moving forward, trying to bring in 4K and bring in some more advanced equipment to give us more longevity in what we're trying to accomplish here makes sense. And I think that I support this proposal as it's being brought to us. I think that the city staff did what we asked them to do, and again, I appreciate your effort. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, you already said it's not necessary to have the 29,000. Kathleen, this question's for you. How much will be left in the contingency fund if we take this out?
So the council budgeted $150,000 in the contingency for 2020, so it'll be just under $100,000 left in there for 2020.
Okay, so my next question is both towards you guys. If we were to take this Sony camera updates out, that wouldn't hinder anything for now. Would it be best allocated out of these four things, back to the contingency or to supply the infrastructure switches? What, in your professional opinion, do you think would be best?
If I may, and it, just because it speaks to Alderman Meekman's question as well, I think there was some suggestion that somehow the things we were bringing forward were manipulative or designed to influence or whatever. It is not only exactly the opposite, because in fact, when we put together a budget, and Paul does this with a lot of thought and a lot of effort, and ultimately gets approved and makes it through the vetting process, it is believed to be the highest priority stuff. But when we then come back in the middle of the year and try to fund something else from it, then we have to relook at that. So what we did, what Paul did, was clearly look at the lowest priority of those things that actually did make it into the budget. And therefore, these are the things, as Alderman Meekman suggested, that are the most likely to come out of there. And that's a preface to answer Alderwoman Land's question is, we don't like to do this on the fly. If we can give you another answer tonight, it'd be much like the 30,000 that we quoted Alderwoman Widener the last time, and we'll be wrong. Then we'll come back with more detailed stuff, and it's going to be different. So, you know, if all of a sudden, again, this gets changed by 30, at least give Paul some time to determine what is the best use then, because we did all this work to come up with what would be our best answer. You're going to ask us on the fly, we'll give you an answer on the fly, it might be wrong. But if you give us a little bit of time, then he'll have a better answer to tell you how to best re-put 30 back. So, is that fair?
Yeah.
Thanks.
This is sort of a corollary to Alder Land's question. The lifespan of our current cameras, where are they at right now? I mean, even if we decide not to do the updated cameras, what is lifespan of our
We
sort of
updated
current
the
cameras?
cameras in the council chambers 2 years ago.
Okay.
So they're pretty much at the beginning of their life.
Okay, and then the cameras that you would use for potentially someone coming in and doing programming, those are not the
Those
same
are the
cameras?
original.
So okay, so they're
cameras.
associated, so we still need to probably get some cameras that we're gonna expand to do that
Yes.
level of, okay, but it might not be the 29.
Right,
Okay,
right.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, I mean, I think if we're going to, as a community, decide, and I think it's valuable, that we're gonna support having this resource in our community, we should do it in a way that's sustainable and has the most access for the longest term. So I support this proposal.
Any other questions, committee? Motion is in order. No, ma'am, you had your
I have a
chance.
question.
Oh, wow.
Thank you. Question was for Paul. Paul, earlier you had said that there were 10 positions that were funded, now there's 9 filled, and you did not intend to replace the person that was no longer working in your department? Can you clarify that?
By policy this year, open positions were not going to be filled.
So there's a hiring freeze going on in
I-
the department or other departments?
That's citywide. Unless there are special circumstances, and I would defer to the mayor to explain that more, but we are not filling positions unless there's an absolute need to fill those positions.
So the positions that were funded by the council when we approved the budget for 2020, we are not going to fill the positions that were budgeted?
We're keeping the position open until we have a definite need for that position, which in this case would be the CAR 25 halftime.
Well, then why did we budget for those positions if we're not going to fill them?
We did not anticipate that we would have an open position.
Motion is in order.
on this, but I would like to approve the funding to restore Car 25 minus the Sony camera updates.
That's for like a second.
Let me ask a follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
So-
Motion is in order. Motion is in order.
This would pertain to potential motion that I'm considering making, but I need some clarification before I
Make it, and then you can do what you want to do, but let's make a motion. Let's get a motion on it to handle the business. You can always withdraw it.
I'm going around.
Careful. Sorry. I would, it's too late to second hers now, but if you remake it.
The motion is in order.
Go ahead, make the motion.
I'll make the motion then to approve this budget minus the Sony camera updates,
And what is that amount, sir?
minus the $29,975.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded on the motion. Further questions, concerns? Yes, ma'am.
Can I move to amend the motion?
Sure.
So I'd like to amend the motion to include, if we don't get the updates, to cameras specifically for programming outside of the council chamber. So I'd like a quote to come back to council for those cameras, to be amended when we talk about it in council. So I'd like to amend the motion to consider the additional cameras outside of the council chamber.
Is there a second?
Second. Yes.
It's been moved and seconded. Now restate what you're talking about.
Okay, so I believe that my motion was to allow for reintroduction of the price of cameras for additional programming for the council to consider. So the cameras will be struck, the camera upgrades will be out, but I'd like the information about additional cameras to be presented to city council for consideration.
All right. On the amendment? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes. Now on the amendment motion. Any discussion, concern? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, we have item number